And Hedda Hopper, Luella Parsons, and all the other press recognized that talent and recognized his personality. And there was always a close friendship with him. They had a column in probably 500 newspapers.
Saturday morning, May 18th, 1963. Hedda Hopper for the Los Angeles Times. Learned more about Stephen Boyd in Madrid than I ever did in Hollywood. One of 9 children, he started working at the age of 8 on BBC children's plays. Went into small parts at the age of 12, for which he got $9 a week and turned it over to his father. Has 4 brothers, claims they're all better looking than he.
While the public believed Stephen was mixing with Hollywood's finest, in reality he was moving away from glitz and glamour, preferring a quiet life in Los Angeles with his partner Elizabeth Mills, who had been with Stephen since the start of his career in London.
Have lunches, we play tennis, we'd go over to the house, he'd come over to my house, a few parties and that, and he hates to talk about himself. Whereas a lot of actors, you can't shut them up. They're always talking about themselves.
If we would go to a restaurant, Stephen would always take the chair facing the wall so people wouldn't recognize him because he was humble that way. But he wasn't big on going out. He didn't like the adoration. He liked being at home. And Elizabeth would cook. I probably had dinner with him, a couple nights a week. Watch TV, read a book, play Monopoly. It was not very Hollywood.
Right from the beginning, Stephen Boyd, the youngest of 9 children, had always been a reserved young man.
I was such a shy fella from Carmoney to go to Hollywood. It's strange because Mother told me he was such a shy fella, and I was asked to go to the shop for his mother to get stuff on tick because they were pure people, He came in and volunteered to make my younger sister on babysit and done a deal with the mother to go to the shop for him because he was too shy to ask the shop for tick.
An amateur drama group in Carnmoney gave Stephen his first taste of performance, and he was soon appearing at the Group Theatre in Belfast. There he found his true vocation on the stage.
I think that he was a very shy man, and then acting, he was somebody else.
Boyd flourished on stage and screen, but this talent brought a fame that he never felt comfortable with. It was then perhaps cruelly fitting that the Hollywood elite should snub him in turn. While Ben-Hur won a record 11 Academy Awards, Stephen wasn't even nominated.
See, at that time, stars campaign for Oscars. They take ads, they do a lot of interviews and so on, and he didn't do any of that. He says, look, my work speaks for itself, and if I get nominated, hallelujah, and if I don't, well, it's tough. So he was never that gung-ho, ambitious for his career to be a major star.
My only reason, for doing this thing is just simply that, it's work. I don't mind working Timbuktu or anywhere,
I've found, for me, working with actors from Ireland and the UK, there's a much stronger work ethic than the American actors have. They're much more interested in working and in acting than in stardom and fame. Unfortunately, that usually works out for them in that exact way, and they end up working and acting and not becoming stars or famous.
Although he didn't buy into the life of the Hollywood star, he did love his adopted city of Los Angeles and the lifestyle that it offered. But even though he decided to become a US citizen, thoughts of his family back home were never far away.
Billy never forgot where he came from, which I like to think is a characteristic of all the best kind of people who come from our part of the world. They are very drawn to home, as indeed I am. And I remember picking up a magazine, and there Billy, at long last, right at the height of his career, did this big article where he withdrew his Canadian identity and re-established himself as a boy from Glengormley. And he explained why, that had he not invented this fiction, he might still have been busking in Leicester Square.
Stephen's next big role was in the historical epic The Fall of the Roman Empire, where he became good friends with the young actress Monica Peterson.
To me, he was right along with all the other so-called big stars. The difference between Stephen and the other big stars is the big stars were all out getting their photographs taken, but that's something Stephen didn't particularly care about. He could have done the same thing. That was not his calling. He didn't like it. All he wanted to do was work.
Boyd may have wanted to work, but he was becoming frustrated with the type of work he was being offered. In The Fall of the Roman Empire, as in Ben-Hur, he was once again cast in an epic as a Roman soldier.
It is easy for an actor to get pigeonholed. It's the nature of the business. People like no-brainers in this town. They like to do what worked before, because Stephen went on to do Fall of the Roman Empire. Chuck went on to do El Cid. Whether Stephen made the right choice, there's no way to know. And maybe he did resist that a little bit. But sometimes you're just not in control of your own destiny in this town.
Aware that audiences knew him best as the star of sweeping epics, Stephen longed for new challenges. But contractual obligations saw him cast in yet more historical roles.
He felt that he had been typecast and people were going to be expecting more of those kinds of roles, and he could not get out of that epic kind of character. And it might have been a detriment to his career.
By 1966, after a couple other films, he got the chance to act in a role that's not like him. That's something different, unusual. Fantastic Voyage. The premise of this film is that someone needed a brain operation, and the only way to get in there would be to shrink down a medical team and fix what needed to be fixed. I mean, this is as fantasy as you can get.
Yet all the suns that light the corridors of the universe shine dim before the blazing of a single thought,
proclaiming in incandescent glory the myriad mind of man.
Very poetic, gentlemen. Let me know when we pass the soul.
Fantastic Voyage made a star of sex symbol Raquel Welch, and it went on to become a cult classic. But even this futuristic film failed to revive Boyd's career.
I think Stephen Boyd is one of those actors that is always met with the response, who? And I don't think if you walk down the Walk of Fame, you're going to see Stephen Boyd's star in front of the Chinese theater. Most people probably know him as that guy from Fantastic Voyage. And he's also on screen with the most beautiful woman of his time, so who's looking at Stephen Boyd?
By the end of the 1960s, a decade that had started with so much promise, Boyd's career was in trouble. His reluctance to play the role of celebrity even extended to visits back home.
He came home very quietly, trying to avoid the press. We met him one time up in Antrim Lane. He came home at Christmas to see his mother, but he was hiding in the back room and wouldn't come out till he heard it was my father. And he came out to see him and have a chat with his older brother. But he was very private. He loved his mother, but he liked his privacy. He liked to come home quietly.
I don't think he had many friends amongst the acting fraternity. You know, I mean, he led his own life. What he wanted to do was play golf. And he did as many times as possible when he wasn't working.
It was on the golf courses of California that Stephen pursued his true passion, sharing a love of the sport with his partner Elizabeth, whom he finally married in 1976.
They lived a very quiet life. It was get up at 7 or 8 in the morning, and he would read the paper, and then they would go play golf. Stephen didn't live to act. Stephen acted to live. I mean, his golf was the most important thing in his life. And if you said to him, here's a great role and we're going to start shooting tomorrow, or we can go play golf in Carmel, his clubs would be in the car.
Out of favor with the Hollywood studios, Boyd's options were increasingly limited, and he was forced to accept roles in low-budget thrillers and westerns. It seemed that Stephen Boyd, once one of Hollywood's leading men, was now being passed over.
Well, part one of Stephen Boyd's career was his apprenticeship. Part two was his golden age, Ben-Hur through the Fantastic Voyage. Part three was a disappointment because his career seemed to ebb away. From 1967 through to his death, Stephen Boyd made something like 30 appearances on the big and small screens. And the poor films probably drowned his career, unfortunately. But there's enough good stuff there to say this man was an important actor, and he starred in some of the biggest hit movies of all time.
No longer at the height of his fame, Stephen would tragically never have another chance to regain his former glory. Playing golf with Elizabeth on the 2nd of June 1977, he suddenly collapsed. Aged just 45, Stephen Boyd was dead.
He just turned to her and he said, "Elizabeth, I don't feel well. I don't think we should play anymore," and just dropped over, and that's the way it was. And she always in her mind thought that there was something she should have done, and the doctor told her, if I was there in the golf cart with him, I couldn't have saved him.
Stephen Boyd loved to play golf. He loved to play golf. And when he died on a golf course out in the valley, I thought he would have loved to have either died on the set in front of a camera or died playing golf.
Stephen Boyd is actually buried in California. So remarkably, when I went back to Northern Ireland to see the grave for his father and mother, I was surprised that his name appeared on the grave marker, which really expresses the closeness for him with his parents.
We were totally devastated to hear it at such a young age. Just couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable, just really. He'd been our local folk here, really, and the family. All his brothers are older. To hear the youngest down first, so soon after his mother, in 1977, 5 years after his mother.
Stephen died prematurely, and Elizabeth, never to the day she died, never got over it. I mean, she felt that one day he was just going to walk through that door and walk back into her life. And she would put his robe and his slippers out every single night, put him on his bed. And I would invite her to go away, and she would never leave the house because she just was convinced that he was coming back, and if she left, that she wouldn't be there when he returned. And it was a very, very sad thing, but she was totally, totally in love with him.
When I was doing the research, I wrote a letter to his wife, and I was delighted to receive this letter back from Elizabeth Boyd. She said, "We were two very private, devoted to each other people, and lived our lives very quietly away from the Hollywood scene." So she encapsulated the lifestyle that they chose. But from this letter and from other things that I've uncovered, they were very much in love.
Grab your coat, don't forget your hat, but leave your worries, leave them on the doorstep. Life's sweet, just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street.
I've got fond memories of him indeed. I wish he'd stayed a little longer at the group theatre so that we could have had that memory. The strange thing is, if he were alive, he would be my age now. But I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Move it on over, kill yourself in the clover. Only hit for a cent, who cares? Rich as Rockefeller can't be beat. Gold that's round my feet on the sunny side of the street.